Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to this roundtable brought to you by Economic Times HR World and Comport on a topical topic, how to drive employee engagement and stay ahead of the game in the fast changing economy. Before I call in the titans from the industry who will share their perspectives, learnings, and reflections on the topic, I will take a minute or two to share the context. In the post COVID era, all organizations across different geographies and industries are witnessing a high level of employee turnover. Retaining and attracting talent is becoming the number one agenda item for all HR leaders. The last 2 years have thrust HR leadership into the center of business recovery. And now they are on their toes as they inspect and restructure elements of employee experience. In an employee's life cycle, total rewards as an area is becoming increasingly important. If a company's pay practices are not fair, employee-centric, flexible, employees don't feel as if they belong. They'll simply jump to another community. HR leaders are in a position to orchestrate the compensation program in a way that strengthens the perceived value of rewards by the employees. And while doing so, they need to spend more time on the compensation strategy, make informed decisions with the power of data, rather than administering the process and follow a much more human approach by serving the diverse needs, expectations on rewards. To that point, I'd like to welcome the panelists. Please join me in welcoming Vishaka Solapukar, Head Compensation and Benefits, Adani Group; Mini Mahindru Khaturia, Director HR, Indigo, also known as Interglobal Aviation; Govindraj MK, VP HR, Flipkart; Shruti Sridharan, Regional Compensation Leader, Cognizant; and Sachin Bajaj, Founder and Managing Partner, Comport. I'm Pooja Bothra, Associate Editor at EDHR World, and I'll be moderating this session. Viewers, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you once more to this show. We want to make this session very interactive for you. We want you to walk away with great takeaways. So please use the Q&A tab on your screen to share the questions. Do not wait till the end of the session to share your questions. We want to take your questions right from the beginning. We know talent is a new currency to drive an organization's competitive advantage. This has fueled a raging war for talent as key players within an industry compete with each other for a shrinking talent pool. We would like to know from you panelists, how is the business evolving in these current times and prompting HR leaders to craft a new strategy for talent attraction and retention? Govind, would you help us understand that?
Sure, Pooja, that's a very challenging question. And if I know the complete answer, then I don't think I'll be in this panel. I'll be doing something else. So just taking a step back, right? Thinking about where we are and the whole macroeconomics, because it impacts ultimately all the things which we do in our business. Last year was a fantastic year for globally, and especially I'm just going to keep the context within India, right? The number of unicorns were more than the number of weeks we had in a year, that's how it played out for the entire year. And this year, we already have seen that change dramatically, and even in fact, move towards a little bit more on the rougher side of things already. So this just reminds me, I mean, some of these concepts we already heard, which is VUCA world, which is a concept which we all were talking about in the 2000, and now there is the Bani world. And one thing about that Bani, which definitely clicked with me, was the brittleness about this whole situations which we are in. Till last year, we looked like really solid from the outside as an economy and all aspects, and suddenly it is starting to crumble. So that being the case, right, Bani stands for brittle, anxious, and non-linear and incomprehensible. So your question is actually finding an answer to this circumstances. How do we do this? Also superimpose the whole pandemic. So the expectations of an employee on how they need to be treated, what they expect out of the job has changed dramatically. And a few things which I think definitely I learned as a HR BP, HR practitioner, and also my wonderful colleagues from Rewards, right? I can think about 4 things which we need as learnings or essence, which I picked from the last 1 year and this year, how it's playing out. Now, we have seen in terms of attracting and retaining a lot of innovation which we were thrown into, right? The number of practices which we were not questioning, like the work from home, for example, was unheard of, and suddenly it became the norm. And now, after people have started to come back to office, there are multiple versions of hybrid. There is work from anywhere, and then of course the conventional. But the mindset of flexibility has changed a lot. So that's just one example, but multiple innovations have happened in terms of the whole the total rewards and the employee benefit policy. We also have seen proactive, how does the benefits or the total reward strategy becomes a lot more proactive rather than reactive. And it was very difficult to keep up, especially last year and even early part of this year, right? Offers, counter offers, what was regular salary benchmarks had no meaning. The kind of money or the kind of levels and the kind of offers which people were getting, and at the same time, not even one, like 3 offers, 4 offers, more so in the tech world, but even the non-tech world saw a lot of this happening. So how do we at least made us start thinking about how do we make it a lot more proactive in a more holistic way, talking about total rewards rather than just about the compensation angle and the base and the bonus angle. The last thing is the third thing which I think about is it has really tested what is sustainable practices and what are not sustainable practices. A lot of fad gimmicky things at times also came through during the season. Like right from at the time of hiring, certain companies gave you a wonderful bike or a car or a few other things, right? And then free food, some companies have been doing it for years, but some of them have not been doing it. They did it, then they have taken it back. So the whole thing is about how do we make it sustainable, right? And that's the learning also, I think, which we have got. Ultimately, keep the employee at the center of things and drive the right practices. There is no straightforward answer, Pooja. We will continue to experiment and we will continue to do this. I think one thing which is very clear is for sure, a lot of things have changed forever in terms of how we work and what expectations are from the employees. Second part is we need to be more sustainable in whatever we do and not fall into the trap of short-term gimmicky things. Hand it over back.
Those are wonderful points, Govindraj, and just the points to help us kickstart this roundtable discussion. And I'm going to build upon the 3 things that you've spoken about. Design thinking. We need some design thinking to crack the code for talent attraction, retention, as well as total rewards. It should be proactive rather than reactive. That's also very essential, and sustainable practices. I saw raise your hand. Anybody would like to make a follow-up point, Shruti?
Yeah,
would you like to do? Yeah.
Yes, I just want to sort of add on to what Govind said, right? Who does your work today has changed, Pooja, largely, whether it's a crowdsourced, employment talent pool, or whether it's a gig worker, right? Or somebody who's working part-time, right? So the whole of that definition has changed in terms of a work standpoint. How does this work get done, right? When I log into a portal to pay my insurance policy, I have a bot talking to me, right? So how is the work getting done? It's done through AI, it's done through automation, right? And the when and where of the work. You could be located anywhere, everywhere, right? You could be working over a collaborative platform. You could be on a flexible employment, right? So like Govind said, some things haven't changed, but some things have changed. How we work, how work gets done, the kind of employment contract, the workforce per se, right? I think HR today is now thinking about, like you said, the design of work, collaborative platforms, inclusive talent and workforce strategies, right? Policies that are flexible and more beyond compensation, right? Pivoting the dialogue beyond compensation. I think that's pretty much, like you said, the design thinking, right? What will make an employee now in today's scheme of things, right? When they've been through a pandemic, when life has changed, when the definition of purpose, right, is no longer buying a house, paying that EMI, right? What's going to usher them into a workplace, right? Is I think what all of us are grappling with. And I think Govind very nicely put it as, reactive, sustainable, more proactive and sustainable, and practices that are more embedded and more employee-centric, right? I think I would second what he said.
Minnie, your thoughts?
I think both Shruti and Govind picked up points that were so relevant during this time, because I think all the companies at this point in time are thinking about their existing policies, um, and also what are the kind of changes that they need to bring upon after post COVID, right? Because a lot has changed. Like Shruti said, that people are actually talking about purpose. They are thinking about whether they really need this job, or should they be really going to the hills and doing something different, or should they be doing something else? Do they really want this job or not? And I think that's where um, HR and the business together are putting their heads together on what is a sustainable model, what are the kind of things that they should be really looking at. From an existing policies and structure standpoint, I think one of the key things is that how are we actually going ahead and communicating our overall employee value proposition to the employees? And I think that's the key, right? You might be doing a lot of things for the employees, but if you're not really going ahead and communicating them and making them understand um, all of this, uh, I think it's all going for waste. And they might look at only, and when you talk about total rewards, and all of us do understand that total rewards is just not cash in hand. They're not, it's of course beyond that. What are the kind of benefits that you're providing? Or how flexible are your policies? Are they relevant to the employees that are in the organization? We talk about millennials and Gen Zs and all of that, and are they actually being catered to when you're talking about all of these policies? You might have all of that, but are you able to really go ahead and communicate that to the employees, make them understand that if I'm giving you a medical benefit, medical insurance benefit, this is how it's going to help you or your parents or your in-laws in times of need. So are we able to really go ahead and communicate that? I do know that a lot of especially tech companies are giving out huge joining bonuses. Every time we end up actually going ahead making an offer, I do know that people already have a 2 to 3 offers in hand. So, and when you're talking about policies, it's not just for your existing employees, right? So how do we really communicate that to our candidates? Are they attractive enough to really have candidates come on board? So putting all of this together, and how accessible is this information for your candidates or employees? So when they come on board, is it just at the time of an offer letter that they have this total reward statement that we keep talking about in their offer letter, or is it accessible to them when they come on board at any point in time, and they don't really have to reach out to the HR team, understanding all of this? So I think all of us here and across the HR teams and business teams are trying to see how do we really engage employees better. Are we talking about culture? Are we talking about wellness? Are we talking about mental health? And I know a lot of companies have started really having really more conscious discussions around mental health, and picking up programs and encouraging employees to really go ahead and talk about it. So all of these aspects, which were not talked about earlier, are being spoken about post-COVID era. We talk about great resignation, and all of us are trying to grapple with the fact that how do we ensure that our employees are engaged, they stay with us for a longer period of time, and and all of that. I think we are all thinking about what is the best way to really move forward.
Minnie, you've taken my role. You put forward lots of questions for the other panelists. And, one thing that really stood out for me was that there could be many policies in place and a lot of, what should I say, elements to total rewards, but sometimes communication gets missed. Sometimes the employees cannot make the most of what is actually there for him or her to use. I'd like to bring Sachin in and ask him that since he comes from the site that creates and researches on total reward processes and programs, that how can this be solved?
Thank you so much, Pooja. I think great talks and discussion going on here. A lot of words have been said, and in a general way, this experimentation is becoming the norm for every industry, every company, because of the great resignation, because of the challenges we are facing post-COVID, how to maintain either work-life balance, working from home, or creating a balance of work-life, working from home as well as office. I think companies are also struggling that they want them to come back to office because they feel productivity is low. So there's so many things going on. I think in general, I would say that if I'm an organizational leader, right, I will think from the productivity standpoint that how improved productivity I'm actually bringing in the company. From the HR standpoint, I will always feel that can I engage my employees, right? And then as a manager, I will always challenge that can I actually deliver my practical day-to-day jobs or not? So there are three angles to it. And to create a balance between these three angles, I think these leaders, whether it's a business leader, HR leader, or a managerial group of, a bunch of groups, basically, they have to sit together to find out, what needs to be done around this part. There's no right and wrong answer. I don't think that anybody on this panel or beyond this panel knows the answer to this challenge. I think it's just an experiment. People have to try out some more ideas, around this to verify. One thing which I definitely add to this challenge is the communication part, right? So far, the communication has been only limited about a total reward statement which articulates cash compensation, right? Then it moves to a stage where the organization becomes a little mature about adding the benefits, allowances, and some other retention bonuses and so on. I think it has to move a little ahead of that now. If we have to manage this great attrition, around the world, I think it has to go beyond that, saying that what is my strong leadership capabilities, which are value adding to your professional career and your contribution to the company. What kind of empowered culture which I offer you on the plate, right? Do you have the capabilities to pick up an opportunity and work on it, or are you restricted by the job description which is given to you, right? Not monitoring day-to-day job, right? I mean, everybody across the world knows that young fellows, they don't like somebody sitting on their shoulder and asking them, what have you done today, or what have you done in the last week? They don't like it. So if you have to manage that talent, let them actually have a free hand to deliver things. Look at the outcome measure rather than how they're reaching to that outcome, right? Decisions, for example, whether work-life balance is in the hands of the employees or in the hand of the organization. I think if we leave it in the hands of the employee, because they are the one who are getting impacted, and let them take a decision whether they want to work 2 days at home or 3 days in office, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, you are trying to make them happy. So why not let them take a decision how they are feeling happy about it? I think these are some of the thoughts which I say, and these are all part of the communications which has to happen more frequently than ever before.
Yes, very valid points, Sachin, and I totally agree that collaboration amongst the stakeholders and communication, no amount of communication is more, are very important, for engagement, meaningful engagement with the employees. Vishaka, I'd like to get you in and ask you, what are generally the solid pillars of a strategic HR agenda to enhance employee productivity and loyalty? How do you see total rewards as a powerful tool?
So, thank you, Pooja. I mean, total rewards is definitely a powerful tool when you look at it across all the elements that it encompasses. And here I actually want to refer to something that Minnie spoke about in terms of the sense of purpose, which really can pull things together. Because the industries we are in, when I hear everybody, and I have heard the entire HR community over the past few months talk about hybrid working, flexible working, working from home, so on, so forth. The industries we are in, we cannot afford to be working from home. My people running the ports have to be at the ports. My people running the airports have to be at the airports. The power generation team has to be generating the power for the rest of the country to use. So that for us has, in a sense, not been something that we could even consider, talk about, look at when there has been mayhem all over the country. So for us to have a strong sense of purpose where everybody feels that we are playing our part in building the country, we are playing our part in keeping the country running, has been something which has been extremely important for us in making sure that through this extremely difficult period for the world, we've been able to kind of do our part and be on site and deliver what we've needed to. So for us, I think as we look at that, benefits actually has been a very significant pillar of total rewards that we have worked with. Because when you are a group, a conglomerate as varied as we are, we have had to even look at benefits very differently. Because on one hand, we need a group identity which reflects our values and culture. But on the other hand, you have some businesses which are very, old world businesses, as people like to call them, where people have to be on site, they have to work their shifts, they have to do whatever they have to, and they work in very dangerous scenarios sometimes, especially when we have a mining business, we have power generation, so on and so forth. So therefore, benefits which really reflect the fact that we are here to mitigate a lot of the risks that you face. We are here to kind of take care of your physical, medical needs, emotional needs, financial needs, so on and so forth becomes important. On the other hand, we have very new world businesses where innovation and creativity become very important. Therefore, our benefits have to focus on providing a work setting where the innovation can flourish. And so on and so forth. Or when you have shared services which are very SOP driven and with young, a young population, how do you kind of, in a sense, it is a similar SOP driven setup as compared to our manufacturing or generation units, but the employee profile is very different, and therefore you need to engage them differently. So trying to look at, creating a group experience. And for us, that has been what we call Adani Cares. And that has been how we have been kind of communicating all our benefits, looking at everything that we do. And then when we have that kind of an umbrella statement of Adani Cares, everything, the entire benefits philosophy and benefits strategy becomes very easy to map onto that platform, and therefore how we communicate it. So for us, actually, I think benefits has been a fairly significant pillar on which our last few years have kind of helped us, sustain the momentum that we are working with.
Thanks, Vishaka. And later on in this discussion, I'd like to, discuss more that how we can make total rewards as a subset of your organizational culture and how it can help each other. Shruti, did you want to share a point?
I think I was just sort of, agreeing with what you just now said, Pooja. I think, it's not in isolation, right? Who you are or your value system, right, which is the bedrock of your culture, is, the employee experiences through your total reward program, right? I mean, how I experience the organization is around the policies, right? That's my first window to understanding an organization, is about how the employer cares about me, right? So like she said, I think at Cognizant, we believe that we want to create an environment for everybody to thrive, right? Whether it's flexible working, that's a part of my total reward statement, to be well, right? We are an organization with a heart. And this philosophy of yours, which is total rewards, will have to speak to different cohorts of an employee, right? Each of them have a different need. So there is somebody who's at the start of their career where they're looking to learn and grow. Right? So do you have a growth proposition? Can they feel empowered about how they can grow within the organization, right? That's a part of the total reward statement. Somebody's heading towards retirement. What do you have for them in terms of retirement, right? Through the COVID, I mean, what kind of insurance support could the organization give, right? So this holistic view of what an employee can experience through their lifetime, right, or lifespan within the organization, which of course has become very irrelevant today. But having said that, right, who you are, what you stand for, right, is what an employee experience, and that window to that employee is your total rewards program, right? Which embraces and provides them that sense of purpose, and it's definitely anchored on your values, right? And I don't think it's something we can, disassociate. Yeah, so I sort of wanted to say, Vishaka, you very beautifully brought it together, right, in terms of purpose and the umbrella of, who your organization is. And I think it's the same, right? For us, it's be well. A lot of emphasis around, emotional, mental, physical well-being. We have found that, bringing employees together on a common, platform, right? We had a healthy family challenge where the emphasis was around physical wellness, right? And it extended to families as well. So we're trying to extend all of our reward propositions, not just to the employee, but also to the extended family, right? It's our way of community and embracing the community and giving back in some ways. So yeah, I mean, it's very closely intrinsically linked to your values and to who you are.
Shruti, you've already shared quite a few examples, but I'll just take one audience question here. And Sumeksha is asking, what are the engagement activities or initiatives that have worked for IT companies during this great resignation period? What new has been done to help sustain and retain current talent? Would you just like to add something or just address this question?
No, I think, we've been very mindful, right? I think, like Govind said, there were proactive and reactive measures that we took, which were around compensation. I think that was the biggest, action that most IT companies did. But from an employee engagement standpoint, right, for us, the commitment was about the employee's emotional, physical, and mental well-being, right? That's one of the core action that, we were focused on, right? So if you look at the programs that we've delivered, right, whether it's through the Cognizant Health Challenge, about 25,000 associates are focused on calorie loss, increase their steps, right, reduce their fat percentage along with their family. That was a big event. We've made sure that we've had heartfulness, meditation, right, employee assistance program, from a wellness standpoint. Apart from just the core job itself, right? I mean, how are you? Employee engagement is not just about, feel good, right? It's also about, your job per se, right? Are you equipped and enabled to handle your role on a day-to-day basis, right? So emphasis on training and investment, right? Skill and capability building, right? And then a path for progression. Yeah, can I see that, what I'm doing every day, does it lead to a progression, right? So changing the dialogue on progression has been one of the big things that Cognizant has done, right? Earlier promotions typically were tenure-based in most organizations. You will find that most IT companies today are moving that conversation and saying, hey, if there is a role and if you are capable, right, you can apply and you can become, you can progress, right? So moving that empowerment to an employee, for their career and progression is one of the biggest, wins that we have seen, right? Talking to them beyond compensation about what the organization can offer for them by way of capability, by way of wellness, right, is another big, movement towards employee engagement, right? All of this has worked pretty well for us, is what I would say.
Minnie and Govind, you all wanted to make points?
I think just adding on to what Shruti and Vishaka already mentioned, I think it's also it's important how fairly are your reward practices being viewed to the employees. End of the day, you want to make sure that you're doing everything right and it lands well with the employees as well. So when you're talking about your benefits, you're talking about cash payouts, you're talking about your CTCs. I think whether you're actually providing coaching and mentoring programs, career opportunities to the employees is also very, very important. I know of a lot of companies who actually did focus on, during COVID times, focus on trainings and development and utilize this time for developing people managers. Like we spoke about, other managers equipped enough to really have conversations with their employees on compensation. I think a lot of the managers would not themselves understand a total reward statement, let alone really having those conversations with the employees. And I also know that a lot of times you would end up having conversations like, my manager did propose a higher increase, but I think the HR pulled it down. So I think there's a lot of discussions around whether we should really go ahead and have how can we really empower managers to have conversations on ground, make employees understand their entire total reward the look at the kind of opportunities that you're getting, the mentoring and coaching conversations. I think the entire package overall, more about conversations, more about empowering. And I also know that when a small um, act of giving access of total remotes of their own employees to managers, it a lot of them would come back and say that they feel empowered, making those decisions for their own employees, having those conversations and understanding them really well. They know how each employee is placed within the entire range. I think the entire empowerment of leaders, entire coaching and mentoring programs, I think that goes a long way, showing that there are career opportunities available, not just within the function, but outside as well. We've had people move from operations team to HR and vice versa. Um, and that shows how open one could be in terms of providing opportunities to employees and being open about giving those kind of path and career growth to employees. So I think I
Yeah.
personally feel that it's not just about cash and benefits and insurances, but a lot more when we talk about total rewards.
Govind, you were going to share a thought?
Yes, so it's actually a combination of what I mean, Shruti, Vishaka, Mini. I mean, it's like a what we call it as plus one to whatever they have said. But I also have been noting some of these questions which are coming in the Q&A. I think when I look at these questions, right, and the direction of these questions, first and foremost, what struck me is that what is defined as the scope of total rewards, we as HR professionals, first of all, need to expand it. And only we do that, then we spoke about communication, right? Communicating to employees. Today, an employee will be thinking about total rewards at best as cash, which is your base bonus, LTI, ESOPs, if there is any, and a little bit of the benefits. But total rewards is actually for me everything and anything which an employee faces after they join, right? I mean, the whole experience is about total rewards. And it is and you mentioned somewhere it's subset. For me, it's actually a huge part of driving and indicating the culture and the values of the organization. If you take a simple example of how a leave policy is, and from the leave policy of an organization, you can understand, you'll get a window or insight into how the organization thinks about its people. What is the kind of culture in that organization? If you just look at each snippet of it also. So I think first one, which I wanted to is like, how do we define total rewards and really look at it more holistically, needs to be very clear. And a lot of these questions are very specific questions which I'm seeing in the Q&A. And the answer is, the first simple answer is, there is no silver bullet. There is no one particular program which I think any of the panelists can say, do this, and tomorrow your retention is going to get better. We'll have to do a multitude of actions around it more holistically, right? The second thing which I also felt very strongly, which I've through the years now, and especially the last 2 years, we find I mean, the whole design thinking which you spoke about, Pooja, it is about keeping the employee at the center of it, right? And the employee persona is also many. There is no one single persona for an employee. So personalization by cohorts. Vishaka brought out beautifully about the workforce, right? There are different workforce, there are different cohorts of workforce, and what makes sense for one workforce as a benefit which they will value is different to another cohort of workforce. So the peanut buttering or one size fits all of all the total rewards also doesn't work. So how do we personalize at a cohort level, maybe at an individual level? Today, when we shop, today, when we do anything, what do? I mean, we want personalization. And that is where we also need to think about keeping the design thinking element, which you said, keep the employee, but the employee is not one persona, it's multiple personas, at least keep different cohorts in mind, and come out with the right solutions which cater to them in an equitable manner. It won't be equal, but in an equitable manner. So there are some of these questions which have been asked about how does it drive, how can it drive retention? My workforce is spread across multiple geographies. We have to understand what the core reason why they're leaving, and there could be again multiple reasons to it, right? And where and a lot of times it's also about the execution. A lot of organizations have wonderful programs on paper in the system, but how it gets executed, how it gets articulated by the first line manager. HR workforce is a small workforce. It's a small percentage of the total workforce of the organization. Have we equipped our line managers to the point about Mini made about empowering our line managers to be able to articulate the full value proposition, making that employee value proposition come to life, are we enabling the managers, right? And that itself will help us win the battle a lot more in retention and attraction.
Thank you, Govind. Thank you for answering some of the audience questions also. I'd like to get Sachin in now and ask Sachin, what are some of the best practices you've seen in the industry entailing a comprehensive total reward program?
Thank you, Pooja. I think I have a viewpoint on the best practice. Today's best practice tomorrow will become a very general practice. I think the world is so fast in terms of connecting with each other that there's nothing called best practice remain in the world anymore, right? However, we can call it more of an approach. I think each organization has an approach to address these best practices and how they implement, how strongly they do that with the engagement of the leaders, managers, employees, and so on. That makes the key differentiation, right? You call it, walk the talk kind of concept, right? Some companies only say that I have great practices, but in reality, they don't follow them actually. They are only on the paper and the policies and processes, right? Other organizations don't even articulate that on the paper, but they actually follow them indirectly. So I think this is what is happening in terms of our connection with the organizations, because we are in the business of connecting with comp and ben professionals in India, Asia Pacific, worldwide. I think 3-4 things which comes to my mind, which are becoming very much prevalent. To start with is whatever everybody has said in the past 10-15 minutes, is making one comprehensive place where the basket of everything what an organization can offer is combined together. It can be your cash compensation, it can be allowances, it can be benefits, it can be your non-compensation related practices, which can also be part of the TRS, is becoming a trend. And I think it has to become a trend from the future perspective. If organizations have to make a difference, I think this is the only way they can make a difference, right? Other thing which is becoming more on a technical level, I think the retention bonuses are becoming really, really prevalent especially in the startups and the tech side. I think they are feeling the heat, and I wouldn't call them even the long-term incentives anymore. I think earlier they used to call LTI, but they're becoming short-term retention bonuses. 18 months, 24 months, 12 months sometimes. I think they're becoming very prevalent. And however, one thing which is not happening probably right on that path is it is happening at an ad hoc level, right? There's no structure in place. So companies are taking calls on the fly, and they're taking call for specific individuals, right? That might lead to some challenges in future. Right now, I think we're just trying to handle that hurdle, but it might create a challenge. Other thing which is happening quite often in market is separating the processes. So earlier organization wants to have one standard annual process where they want to do merit cycle, they want to do promotion cases as well, they want to do salary correction and so on. Now companies are spreading that throughout the year. They are doing more frequent salary reviews than ever before. So merit cycle finishes, then they follow something like promotion or progression cycle. 3 months later, they do something like a mid-year review for a critical position holder, critical talent holders, and so on. Then again, after 3 months, they can have again identification of a key talent, potential talent, and do something about them. So those are becoming the norm, that throughout the year, you have at least 3-4 cycles of doing something about the rewards management. It is a good practice, in my view, because I think it spreads the connection within an organization to say that I am actively looking at what is needed in my organization and doing something about it, rather than just waiting for the whole year where the problem becomes so big and then we get stuck with the budget availability. Wherein when you are spreading small budget and also articulating what's the value of spending this budget, and you will save the value by not losing the talent, I think it's a better proposition to the management to digest on time to time basis, rather than saying, I have 10% budget this year, can you give me 12%? Nobody will buy that out. So that's the other thing which is happening. I think these are some of the thoughts which are coming to my mind. Anybody would like to probably add from your experiences are welcome.
Vishaka, you would like to share something?
Yeah, I think when, whether what Mini or Govind or Sachin spoke about the last, about, equity. And that is something I think is a very significant thing, because what I have seen and heard over the last year or so in multiple conversations is one of the biggest reasons why employees feel disengaged or feel upset or leave is internal inequity. Because what has happened as a result of this, great resignation, so on and so forth, is we have 80% of the employees which have been with us for a longish duration, who are on the salary levels that they are, and then they suddenly see newcomers coming in with market salaries plus a premium because we desperately need to have somebody, and so on and so forth. And that really creates a whole lot of almost an anger, because we know, and I think every HR person will probably agree with me here, is when employees accept the role, they are happy with the absolute number that they are offered as salary with the whatever proposition they are offered. The issues start coming in of the nature of bhala uski kameez mere kameez se safed kyun. That is actually the single largest compensation issue employees have with what they are getting. And therefore, when you have a significant number with a certain salary levels, and then you have a certain on different, focusing on reducing that inequity really becomes very important in how you look at continued peace of mind, though that is always elusive, but at least reduced dissatisfaction. And for us, that is something we have worked on fairly extensively. And I think there, Sachin and his team have been very helpful in terms of when we went in with that, where we were able to allow our managers to see, market data along with internal data and so on and so forth, to take the kind of decisions to direct increases very differently in a very focused, thought through manner than has been done in the past. I think that is something which has been very significant in terms of how employees have ended up feeling at the end of the cycle. So this inequity which comes as a result of this fresh hiring is a very, very big issue that we really need to work with.
Very valid point, and I think Sachin wants to reply to that. Sachin?
Sorry. I just want to add that to Vishakha's point, that one of the good example on this can be when we are offering employees that they can work 3 days from home and 2 days from workplace and so on. I think one of the things which comes to people's mind who have been forced to work all the 5 days would be this, that how come that we are not, so it's not only about cash competition, it's not only about the competition which they're getting for the job, it's also about these practices. So what else organization can do for the people whom they are actually asking them to come all 5 days vis-a-vis other people whom they are allowing them to work 3 days at home? That is something which organization have to think very, very deeply. This is the real comparison people will do. And they will say that, how come I am not offered that? And if organization is not offering, what else I'm offered, which is not offered to the other set of employees? I think this is a very common practice which is happening as well.
Interesting. So, today we are operating in the fourth industrial revolution, and we've got these accelerated digital technologies that is helping us digitalize all processes. And today everyone is talking about faceless HR. To that, we have to first digitalize all these processes. And there are multiple advantages. Like, for example, if we talk about a digitized total rewards process, it helps in administration, it helps to personalize policies for diverse employees, as well as it helps to generate data and many more. I'd like you to share your insights on, the digitization of total rewards policy. Anyone is free to share their insights. Yeah, Mini.
I think it's in this day and age, I don't think there's any other way around it. We can't have a paper pen of a total reward statement where we just hand it over. And of course, looking at the kind of number of people that we all are operating, and the kind of number of employees that we all have in our organization, it's just not possible to have like a paper pen total reward statement given out. I said earlier that I think how you actually are providing this, how accessible is this information to each and every employee and the managers is extremely important. For the employee, it is important for them to be able to access this information on the go when they want to really see what are the kind of policies that are relevant to them, what are the kind of pay that they are getting, what are their bonus policies, what are the kind of benefits that they're getting, are there any learning opportunities or career opportunities, all of them available at one page is something that is extremely important from an employee standpoint. From a manager standpoint, I think understanding how each of their team members are actually placed in the entire salary range. How do they compare from one to another? How is their performance being evaluated year on year? And when it comes to comparison of one employee's salary to another, is there a performance criteria that is being looked at? Is there equity that we're talking about? Are we being fair? Are we looking at gender diversity when we're looking at all of these? So I think having these numbers at the click of a button and digitizing them is something that all organizations are looking to have. I don't see it any other way at this point in time.
Shruti, your thoughts?
I agree with Minnie, and I think we don't have a choice. We are 300,000 strong. Every IT company, services specifically, right? 300 to 600,000 is the size of this organization. We really can't print brochures and tell people, what's the equity program. We can't do that. We need to have a system that's fairly agile, where the employee can view their, relevant rewards on the go, like Minnie said, and that's a part of everybody's strategy today, where they have an application where they can view. Secondly, right, the line manager. I think how your line manager communicates, what your entitlements are, is a large part of how people perceive equity, right? Having said that, who's the line manager? The line manager is somebody who's just passed out of their engineering college and has 2 years or 3 years of experience, just learning to adult themselves, right? So as much as we can, right, apart from making the line manager capable, it's also important that we have direct access for associates, right, or employees to view their entitlements and interpret this in their own, in a way that's fair and consistent across the board, right? So an employee experience will have to be consistent across the organization. So we have no other option but to digitize. But I think, at the crux of it, you need to have the right, policies, right, that are scalable, right, and that can lend itself to that kind of an automation, and that goes back to who you are as an organization. But I think we are required to be very agile today because Govind was giving you multiple examples, right? A retention bonus, joining bonuses, benefits. At the time of COVID, for example, right, Pooja, we all had to come up with different insurance programs, right? And it was important to know what your competitor was doing, not because you were trying to be better, but because understanding how you can best tailor your insurance program to meet the employee's needs. We didn't know of a lot of insurance opportunities you had, right? Because we deal with national insurance, and we didn't know what we can do for our employees, right? So each of us were talking to each other across forums to make sure that our employees had the best support, medical support possible, right? And for that, we needed to know how they were using these plans. So understanding usage, right, of a particular program that we have, what do you invest in, what do you roll back, right? Where do you put your money, right? Any of those decisions, right, that help employee comes with that kind of data, right? Today, data is how you all make decisions. Whether an employee likes a program, doesn't like a program, do we need to tailor this program? All of that, right? Employee voice of employee, right? All of that is largely driven on digitization. How does my manager see the information, right? You can't keep sending Excel sheets, right? So I think all of that, technology is inevitable. Digital technology is what we all heavily rely on. And I think there's no escaping that, right? And I just wanted to say that, that's what employees prefer too, right? You no longer go to a hotel and make an order. You go through Swiggy, pick your own stuff and order. So I think that's how they want to see their total rewards too. They want it customized. They want it hyper-personalized. They want to be heard about how they are using that particular benefit. They want changes. They want it customized. And I think we are all trying our best, right, as organizations to be as agile as we can, right, when we deliver our programs.
Very interesting point, Shruti. And I like to share one thing that, often when I speak to leaders, they tell us that they cannot depend only on their organization to source data. They need data from the ecosystem. And sometimes these digital processes, maybe having a partner on board for your processes, helps you to get data and benchmark your policies. Sachin, your thoughts?
Before I share thoughts on your question, Pooja, I think I'd like to add something on the value proposition which companies are also reflecting. I think one of the more common practice, which is also growing in the market, is about future perspective of the compensation, right? So organizations are thinking that if I reflect that how your basic fixed compensation is going to grow in the next 5 years, what kind of new benefits which we are launching in the next 6 months to 12 months, what kind of allowances you can be eligible for, and what kind of LTI which can have a potential from X value right now to a Y value in the next 3 years, right? And then collect all of that to reflect the future value for an employee. It's becoming very much prevalent. When I was in corporate life, we had this open forum with the leaders and managers, and we were asking exactly the same thing, that what do you want to reflect in the total reward statement? And when this idea popped up by one of the managers, said that why don't we show the future value, future growth value of LTI, ESOP, everything together? Other managers shot down that idea, saying that people will take that as a commitment from the organization. But that's exactly the point. I think people are looking for that commitment for future. That if you are expecting people to give the commitment from their side to be with the organization, be productive, perform for the organization for future, then we also have to give a commitment to them. And I think there's nothing wrong in that. It's just a myth that it will create a problem for the organization. In my view, I think it can grow as one of the best practices, if I say so. Coming back to the tech part of it, Pooja, what you asked, I think technology is only a channel, in my view. I think you pick up the HR tech as a channel to handle the efficiency, handle the nuances of problems, errors in the manual processes versus automated processes. Those things can happen. I think beyond that or before that, organization has to take all those calls which we have been discussing in this forum. Once that thought is clear, then only technology can help. Technology standalone cannot actually help any organization if they have not changed their mindset, if they're not changed the mindset of the leaders and the managers, if they're not handed over the empowered baton in the hands of the manager to take the decisions about it. Nothing can change. Technology will only transfer your Excel files to probably a platform and nothing else. But the more important fact is about that philosophy to be changed and the mindset has to be changed.
Yeah, I agree. So we are talking about transformation, but actually none of us have really transformed. I've had many leaders come and say this in my roundtables. Govind, yeah, please, your thought.
Right. So not to repeat what everybody has said. So it's a no-brainer, right? Digitization, it has to happen. And as you see, as a nation also, we have been digitizing a lot, and some of these things directly related to benefits. I think, the amount of, the way we have been able to manage scale, today the size of most of our organizations in India are at a huge scale. And imagine that without digitization. And if we had to do all of this, we can't imagine, right? It's a nightmare. So that itself has unlocked so much of productivity for not just the HR team, but definitely for the employees. And what it has done is it has given a sense of information. We spoke about communication and information. With digitization, that's a vehicle which we can, as Sachin has already said, it's a vehicle and a tool. How do we share more information through this digital mode and handheld devices? How are we able to do that is something which we can really think about. And if you really, I just want to take an example of health insurance, right? Most of us don't really look at it at any point in time unless when you need it or somebody needs it, right? And at that time, you want to figure who's that contact person whom I have to ask. It starts from there. And then when I go to the hospital, do I need to have, is it paperless? Sorry, is it without payment? cashless, how to do all of these things. If the digital system is able to make that very seamless, imagine the amount of employee experience at that too at the time of strife for the person and their family. What a huge difference it makes, right? So the employee digitization, apart from productivity, access and information, it absolutely brings in the culture of care and the whole aspect of really enhancing that employee experience for the individual. I mean, and last but not the least, it does make our planet a lot more greener. That's all I have.
Interesting. Vishaka, I'd like to ask you, what is the transformative potential of total rewards in elevating your brand story and organizational culture? I know you spoke about Adani Care, so I'd like you to a little bit more elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think when we look at total rewards as an all-encompassing concept, where it is, the money part of it, the benefits, the work experience, and the feeling that you're left with when you leave you leave office to go home. That entire process really is what you are offering the employer as an employee, and therefore becomes a part of total rewards. So, and I think we've heard it discussed today that benefits is something that really gets, undervalued in terms of how an employee looks at it, and in terms of how, what is it that they get from it. And therefore, when you look at offering a total rewards proposition and really transforming the way the employee looks at his or her relationship with you as an employer, I think how you put that proposition together is really going to be something that makes a difference. And I know this is something which has been in conversations in HR forums for the last 15 odd years, if not more, in terms of how do you put this together, how do you look at it. What has changed is the elements that keep getting added. What changes is when with technology, while it may be a channel, it is an extremely powerful channel which can enable us to change our thought processes in terms of how we evaluate the value of multiple benefits, how we can look at it for offering flexibility in terms of various benefits depending on what the cohort or persona of employees that we are looking at, and therefore how we can offer that personalized experience of employment to every single employee is something that is really going to be definitive in terms of how we look at the experience going ahead.
I think we have time to just take one closing statement from all of you. Minnie, your closing statement on the topic.
I think communication is key. And empowering the managers at the right levels are the two things that I think will be my key takeaways from this entire conversation. Of course, digitization is a no-brainer, but communication and empowering your ground level managers is something that should be the key. Not forgetting that we need to be making sure that we are relevant in terms of our policies and our practices and our employee value proposition.
Shruti?
It's a very tight balance, right? At one end, you want to feel, you want to be able to communicate hyper-personalization. At the other end, you want to appear fair and equitable. I think bringing together both, right? I think is, a tightrope walk for the HR professionals, which we're trying to do. And I think it makes it very exciting for all of us. So what I'm taking away clearly is, the need to, be perceived as being fair and equitable, right? While at the same time being able to hyper-personalize. That's what I would take away.
Govind?
Right. So I think total rewards is a true embodiment of the culture and the values of the organization. And as long as the organization is very clear about its purpose and what it stands for, right? It is very difficult to get all the best benefits in the world in one organization. So cherry picking happens most of the times. And it's very difficult to cater to all of that. But as long as the organization and HR and managers, everyone is anchored around the values and why we are doing what we are doing, why we are choosing not to do something else, has to be clear in our minds, clear in the minds of the leaders and the managers, and ultimately to the employees. I think that holds the core of making it, weaving everything which we do as an organization as the total rewards, embedding all of the values which the organization stands for. I think that is a tough process. There'll be still attrition. There'll be still cherry picking questions in AMAs. All of that will happen, but it's a free, transparent organization. Employees will be able to ask these questions, and we'll be able to answer these questions because we are anchored on the core values and the purpose of the organization.
Sachin?
I think sometime back somebody asked me that what's the disadvantage if we don't do total reward statement communication. My answer to that would be it will be advantageous for the other organization who wants to protect the talent if they do it right. As simple as that.
So thank you, Vishaka, Manish, Shruti, Govind, and Sachin for joining us for this very engaging, wonderful roundtable discussion on total rewards. And I agree with what most of you have said. Everything really is, giving us an impression of what industry trends are. And I would just like to conclude by saying that it needs to be more holistic. And there are no limits to the number of elements you can add in total rewards. But end of the day, like Govind said, you cherry picked it so that it kind of relates with your organizational story, your organizational culture, and what the brand stands for. Then the chances of going wrong is less and it's more sustainable. With that, thank you, audience, for joining us today. I hope this session was insightful for you. I hope a lot of ground was covered and you're walking with great takeaways. Thank you, all of you. Good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.